Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the full County Council. I'd like to start by asking my good friend, Pastor Bill Toynton, to say prayers.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today in the name of your Son, Jesus, with a sure confidence that as we pray in his name, you hear our prayers. We pray this morning for everyone here who have dedicated themselves to serving our lovely county of Lincolnshire. We thank you for the commitment they have demonstrated in their service. We ask that you will fill them with your wisdom and guide them with your presence as they seek to honour you in their service. Help them to follow the example of your Son Jesus, who came not to be served, but to serve. Help each one here to serve with great integrity the communities you place in their care. Guide the discussions that take place, that all decisions may be to your approval and receive your blessings. We especially ask that as they seek to show the same love Jesus demonstrated in caring for those who are most vulnerable in our communities, you will help them to be compassionate in providing for the hungry, the lost and the lonely. We pray this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Father God, we now bring to you the prayer Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Bill. Before we start, just a few notes. The proceedings will be live streamed and recorded. Please note there's no fire drill or fire alarm test planned. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the car park at the front of county offices. Members should be reminded or mindful that the high-performing loop system is sensitive to any type of noise in the chamber. Ambient sound from the chamber immediately prior to meetings and during open session may be picked up by the loop, and therefore councillors should conduct private conversations outside of the chamber. The loop will be muted at the close of the meeting. If a member would like to speak, they should raise their hand so it can be clearly seen. Requests to speak will be monitored by Democratic Services and managed by myself with the assistance of the Chief Executive. When I invite you to speak, you should press the button on your microphone unit to make it live. Please speak directly into the microphone and press the button again to switch it off once you have finished. Apologies for absence. Chief Executive.
Thank you very much. We've received apologies from Councillor Danny, Councillor Carter, Councillor Dyer, Councillor Hall, Councillor Wotton, Councillor Young, Councillor Wright and Councillor King. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Declarations of councillor interests.
Is there any more?
Sorry, any more apologies that we don't know about? I think we've covered them all. Thank you, Debbie. Declarations of councillors' interests. Do councillors have any interest they would like to declare? None seen. Moving on then to the substantial item, which is local government reorganisation and the consideration of options for local government reorganisation and submission of an interim plan to the Minister of State for Local Government and English Devolution. A report has been circulated by the Chief Executive and comments from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board are attached as Schedule 1. Item 3, local government reorganisation and amendment has been submitted by the Independent Group. I therefore move that there be one debate on the Conservative Group motion and the independent group amendment and the following council procedure rules be suspended for the duration of item 3, 13.6b, 13.6c, 13.6d, 13.6e, and 13.10b, and that, in introducing and moving the motion, the mover of the motion be allowed to speak for 6 minutes, that the proposer of an amendment be allowed to speak for 6 minutes, that councillors seconding a motion each be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and may reserve the right to speak later in the debate. That other speakers may be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, that no further amendments be moved. Is there a seconder?
Can I second, please, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I wish to remind members about the rules of debate as set out in Rules 13.5 and 13.9 of the Council Procedure Rules, which have not been suspended. These are set out in paragraphs 1 and 2 of your order of proceedings. Except as set out in Rules 13.5 and 13.9, councillors are only allowed to speak once during the debate. Therefore, a motion and any amendment will proceed as one debate. The debate will take the form as set out in paragraphs A to G of the order of proceedings. Councillor Hill, would you like to move your motion?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just before I start, I'd just like to, as it's this final meeting of the County Council of this council term, thank all members for their contribution, for which I think has been a pretty successful 4 years. We've had our interesting debates, but I think the good news is that we've continued to deliver services well to the people of Lincolnshire. So just to thank all councillors who've spent the last 4 years coming here or attending meetings to make sure that happens. In terms of the subject before us, can I just say just one thing? We are proposing an amendment, and it's not a substantive amendment. It is merely a clarification, because I think there is some confusion on recommendation 1, where it says a proactive approach and development for a single tier of local government for Lincolnshire. I think that is technically correct, because what that means is creating unitary government. So what we're proposing, so members are aware, is that we delete a single tier of local government and just say proposals for unitary local government. So I think there has genuinely been some confusion. So that, of course, we will be proposing. It's not a substantive change, but just to let members aware. I know normally we do that. So I think it was merely for the confusion. It doesn't make any difference to anything of any substance, but obviously welcome to take any views on that. So today, Chairman, we have been asked by government, who've, as we know, decided to have announced that they wish to abolish county councils and district councils within this term of the government. And deadline is today for areas, all leaders of 2-tier councils in England have been written to say, this is the government intention, come forward with your proposals. So each area will come forward a proposal. I think naively the government thought it perhaps might get 1 or 2 proposals from an area, but as you see from the sheets that have been circulated, there are hard copies if anybody can't see it quite on the screens. There are quite a few other proposals which look like being put forward. Today we are here as a county council, so we are here debating from a county council perspective what would be best. So in terms of the government's proposal, on page 31 of your agenda pack, there is a schedule there, and it there states very clearly what are the criteria which the government will go forward with or consider when they look at those. So it should be for the whole area of the in question. It must be the right size, and as a guiding principle, 500,000 minimum, or there may be some flexibility around that. It should improve efficiency, how it will manage transition costs, what are the best value proposals, and indeed as part of the Treasurer's comments, there is a summary there. There has been some work done by PwC on behalf of County Council Network, which has been extrapolated for Greater Lincolnshire, that does actually give you the estimated cost of all the different proposals. So obviously there is these new proposals must prioritise delivering high quality services and minimise disruption to those services. Proposals should show how you've worked with other councils and areas. They must support devolution arrangements, so that probably suggests within the Greater Lincolnshire area that we are talking about the Greater Lincolnshire boundary, although again, some flexibility might be there. Should support stronger community engagement, and that's about it. So those are the clear criteria. I know there are rumours around, people saying ministers have said this, ministers have said that. We have had no further clarification, so I think in terms of what is written, those are the criteria. So you'll see before that, if you follow those, there is no perfect solution which ticks all the boxes, but there is basically, if you follow Greater Lincolnshire with a population of 1.1 million currently, and the minimum is 500,000, that would immediately suggest that we are looking at 2 unitaries. In addition, if you go any more than 2 unitaries, the costs actually start to outweigh the benefits which will come, and you'll see from the pack before you that if you do go for the 3 version, it'll probably take 10 years, and probably longer, to get the money back. But more importantly, there'll be a massive disruption to county council services. And we are county councils here. We're not, other councils will put their own proposals forward in terms of what they feel best. So in terms of that, that's why we are recommending, as a council, we put 2 forward, because it's a choice really between having 2 populations which are equal, and then also having a disruption of services, or having less disruption and 2 populations which aren't equal. As I've said, there are other versions around, but we are talking here today as a county council. So the recommendation, we put forward those 2, and I'd finally remind us, this is not our decision. All this is at the moment is that people will put forward proposals by today. The government will come back in a few months' time and then give their opinion on these proposals, I think. And then there'll be fully worked up plans based on what government says, which have to be into government by November 28th, I think it is. Following that, the government's saying that then there could be shadow elections in Lincolnshire in 2 years' time. Personally, I think that's highly ambitious. We almost bet that that timetable will stretch. So that's our proposals, Chairman. I'm aware there is an amendment, so I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bradwell. Before we actually move to the amendments,
Does she want to reserve the right to speak?
yeah, Councillor Bradwell, do you want to reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Before we move to the amendments, I would like the members to vote on the suspension of the rules of debate. So all those in favour of the suspension, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? None seen. Thank you. We now move to the amendment. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. May I first of all, as current Leader of the Opposition, associate myself with the remarks made by the Leader on thanking all councillors who've served over the last 4 years. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure the rest of us have too. We've had our differences, but as Martin says, we've got on with it. So thank you. I'd also like to thank Councillor Hill for the work put in, not just by him, but other councillors and, of course, our officers in getting to this stage in such a quick time, and recognise that work that's done not just here, but across all 7 district councils to get to this point, to meet what I believe is a crazy timetable the government's given us for local government reorganisation, giving us barely a month to get to this point, to come up with proposals for the biggest changes for half a century in the way we are governed. We strongly believe that both options on the table before us today are seriously flawed. I'm proposing an amendment to include a third option, which I believe is more workable, to create local government for Greater Lincolnshire that's less remote than the two options on the table, preserves more democratic accountability, and is a more place-based alternative, and which we believe delivers on all the government's reorganisation criteria, and which has already been adopted as the preferred option of both Conservative-led North Kesteven District Council as well as the independent-led South Kesteven District Council. Some of us have been around Lincolnshire long enough to recall the last top-down local government reorganisation when our historic counties of Kesteven, Lindsey and Holland were mothballed, and in their place Lincolnshire County Council and 7 district councils were created that serve our residents today with local services. At the same time, the new county of Humberside was created in a bid to stitch together the north and south banks of the Humber. That was a marriage doomed from the start, and barely a decade later Humberside itself was scrapped and the two unitaries of North Links and North East Links created, which despite their names and history, neither of which are in the administrative county of Lincolnshire nor even part of the East Midlands region. Not sure we are sometimes either. It's vital that such massive mistakes are avoided this time. However, I start from being unconvinced that to achieve more efficient, less costly services, we need a bigger and frankly gigantic councils. There really is no evidence that bigger is always better. But this process has been launched on the premise that bigger councils are more resilient to financial shocks. Well, that didn't work too well for Birmingham, one of the most recent unitaries to issue a Section 114 notice effectively declaring bankruptcy. In fact, as celebrated research by Professor Colin Copus has shown, there is no correlation between the size of a council and Section 114 notices or appeals by struggling councils for financial bailouts from the government. Nor is there any evidence of an optimal size for local government. For years, both major political parties have been selling us devolution on the promise that it's going to deliver decision-making closer to the people whose lives are affected. I'm proud to be a Democrat, as I believe we all are in this chamber, who've been elected to represent our communities. But I fear even the best outcome of this entire flawed process will turn devolution on its head, will diminish democratic accountability, and at worst will be an end to local government as we know it. Of course, we can't stick our heads in the sand and wait for the civil servants or ministers who will decide our fate to draw lines on a map. That's why, after the dash to meet today's deadline to come up with possible options, it's vital that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater today, particularly given that the limited pre-scrutiny which this local government reorganisation has been given because of the timetable prior to today's council meeting. It's why I believe we need to keep every potential option on the table and work together collaboratively, as the government implores us to do, over the coming months to achieve the best possible solution for all the residents we are privileged to represent. The report before us today identifies the cheapest option, we're told, which is to scrap all 7 local districts across Lincolnshire and to roll all their services into a single, I would say gigantic, new unitary authority based on the current Lincolnshire County Council borders, the so-called continuity model. It would create the 3rd biggest unitary in the country to date and be expected to serve a population of over 750,000 residents. Let me explain why I'm against that. The government guidelines call for a balance between the overall population of a combined mayoral authority, such as the one being established for Greater Lincolnshire right now, and its relationship to the principal unitary councils to be set up. What that means is, within the mayoral authority now being established, covering 1.1 million residents, it's important, the government says, not to build in inevitable rivalries between the elected mayor and the leader of the gigantic new unitary principal authority, which, as I say, would serve more than 750,000 of the total 1.1 million residents. That's 783,000 members, to be precise. 2/3 of the entire population of the whole new combined mayoral authority. I believe that creates serious flaws in its very design and inevitably would evolve into a regional authority in its
Councillor
own
Dilks,
right.
could you start finishing, please? Could you finish up?
I thought we'd just passed a resolution to suspend the 6 minutes rule.
Wasn't it? Still 6 minutes.
I'm sorry? I thought we'd, Mr Chairman, with respect, I thought we'd suspended the normal rules and we were having one debate and the mover...
I have been informed by the Chief Executive that it is time limited.
For information, Chairman, I was looking at the clock and I was within 15 seconds of...
I noticed you had the clock.
We-
I was looking at
I thought, after you spoke, Martin, forgive me, the chairman then, we passed the
No,
suspension
that's
of...
before I
right.
spoke.
Of
But
orders.
I was under
I
the
would
same
respectfully ask, I'd come with the, expecting that we had done away with
rule.
the...
If Councillor Dilks wants to have a slightly... Is it?
I'll see if I can rush it through, but I do appreciate you listening, Martin, I really do.
Okay. Carry on. as
Forgive me,
quick-
Chairman.
That's all right.
Okay. As I was saying, I was talking about that relationship between the principal and the mayoral, and for that reason alone, I believe that the continuity model fails to meet current government criteria, and I don't think it would be acceptable. The second option presented to us today, the two unitaries, also covering the whole of Greater Lincolnshire, with a northern one serving 704 residents, and a southern one much smaller, serving 430,000 residents, is similarly flawed, I believe. It makes sense to me to join the existing unitaries in the north, as in option 1 before us, but then our amendment would give the option, would allow the option to then form two more equally sized unitaries serving the 7 existing district and existing county of links. The population balance assisted by joining with the existing Rutland County Council, with North and South Kesteven and South Holland a combined current population of 406,000 and a similar, the other one being 418. I warmly welcome this is the option, which I call option 3, that was proposed by the current Conservative leader of North Kesteven, Councillor Wright, and seconded, I understand, by Councillor Carrington, and supported by a huge majority across their chamber, with only 1 vote against. I note from the media coverage of North Kesteven's decision that members praised the clarity of the proposal, the quality of the data which had driven its formation, the fact that it delivered on all criteria set by the government, and its principles being anchored in place, etc. On the same day, at South Kesteven District, a similar option based on similar reports prepared by officers was supported by a majority of councillors from all parties.
Okay, Councillor.
I also welcome City of Lincoln's proposal for a 3 unitary option, albeit with different borders. There's a strong case to include Rutland that I'll now leave my colleague Councillor Cleaver in seconding to talk about. I will skip through if I may, I apologise.
I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, Councillor Dilks. Your seconder can...
Well, may I wrap it up by saying I am not, Mr Chairman, asking members to vote that this is that the 3 unitary option is the final. I'm simply asking for it still to be on the table and not to chuck it out right now today. And I just appeal to all members to vote. And I'm sorry, I did understand that the...
It's all right. I'll explain why. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Have
Chairman.
a seconder, please. In fact, before you come in, Councillor Cleaver, let me explain. I did explain at the very start that we will have 6 minutes for the proposers and 3 minutes for the others. When I read out all the suspension articles, and they're all listed, it did not include the time limits, okay? So we were right in saying you have 6 minutes and 3 minutes respectively. Carry on.
Mr. Chairman, I do apologise.
It's all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can bring up our map, please. The reason that Rutland is mentioned is because of Stamford. And you look at the map, you can immediately see why. My division is right on the western tip there. I am surrounded on 3 sides, as is Stamford. 2 of those sides are Rutland. Stamford is the 7th largest built-up area in LCC, and it is because of Stamford that Rutland has to be in our proposal. So it's obvious, looking again at the geography, that in constructing any proposal which meets the criteria for local government reorganisation, which have been set out, we have to consider whether the existing geography of Stamford and SKDC's boundaries meet those criteria. We already have a situation where Stamford's built-up area extends into Rutland, and 650 more homes are to be added to this extension shortly. That is not consistent with the criteria for reorganisation. We can't have urban extensions to Stamford being created by a neighbouring unitary. We have to consider a partnership with them. The A1 next to Stamford, a great concern to those of us in the south west of the county. The A1 through Stamford runs through Rutland and not Lincolnshire. It only enters Lincolnshire 10 miles further north. In terms of strategic transport planning, it needs to be in the same unitary and combined mayoral authority as Stamford. Again, otherwise it doesn't fit the criteria laid down for reorganisation. The massive Mallard Pass solar farm straddles the boundary between Rutland and Lincolnshire, just outside Stamford, causing all sorts of complications which reorganisation is supposed to solve. It won't solve them as long as that boundary remains. 1/3 of Stamford's 11 to 16-year-olds attend state schools in Rutland. Is that consistent with the criteria for reorganisation? I suggest not. Then there's the council tax issue. And I'm not going to duck the issue. It is an issue. It's well known that Rutland has a higher council tax than anywhere else in England. But as it has a population of only just over 40,000, its higher council tax will be heavily diluted in a unitary authority of over 400,000. And in any case, the reasons for its council tax being higher will disappear quickly. They'll melt away
10
due
seconds.
to the economies of scale that were immediately realised by its partnership in a larger council. At OSMB on Monday this week, Councillor Hill recognised the position of Stamford and expressed his sympathy for its position.
Thank you,
Thank you
Councillor
for
Cleaver.
that, but you need to translate your sympathy into tangible actions to address this issue. Please support the interests of Stamford in your response to the Minister today. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, let's open it up to a debate. Are there any speakers? Please indicate. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to speak today likely for the last time in this chamber, perhaps as a Conservative, maybe as a councillor. After an incredible 14 years in local government, a journey filled with its fair shares of ups and downs. But through it all, I have remained true to my beliefs and to the values that have guided me. I stand here proudly wearing my Stamford School tie, a symbol of the town where I was educated, had my first job, and now have the immense privilege of serving as its mayor. Stamford has its... I'm not wearing the chain today, Martin. Stamford has shaped me as it has shaped so many others. And when we talk about boundaries and borders, we must remember that life doesn't stop at a county line. As Councillor Cleaver showed on the map, Stamford is bordered by Peterborough, Northamptonshire and Rutland. Our businesses, our communities, and our daily lives operate across these borders, not within them. That is why today I will be supporting and voting for the amendment before us, albeit I don't support all the comments made in the proposal speech by Councillor Dilks. We are not here to decide the future of local government reorganisation. Yes, we are debating it, but ultimately that decision will be made by ministers in Whitehall. They will consider the various proposals put forward before making their choice. Supporting this amendment simply ensures that another viable option is on the table, one that my own MP, Alicia Kearns, has strongly advocated for and which has also received overwhelming local support, not just in Rutland, but also in South Lincolnshire. Rutland and Stamford share a natural affinity, economically, socially, and in how people live their daily lives. Local areas matter, and we must recognise where those true connections lie. Because in reality, what links the people of Stamford with, say, Grantham, or the farthest reaches of South Kesteven? I have always been a firm believer of local government reorganisation, which will better reflect the communities we serve. Our system must evolve to meet the needs of residents, businesses, and local economies. And I believe reorganisation is the right step forward. So our responsibilities today is not to close doors, but to ensure that all voices are heard and all possibilities are considered. And that is why I will be voting in favour of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Lee.
I don't support the proposal for a 2 unitary authority system, but feel instead that we should opt for the 3 unitary model, as the independent motion has suggested. The clear opposition to the 2 unitary model demonstrates that I'm not alone in my view. I do support the model put forward by the City of Lincoln Council, which includes the whole of the city, plus areas of North Kesteven and West Lindsey. I'll therefore abstain on the independent motion. The Lincoln model recognises the uniqueness of Lincoln, and for me it's important that all voices are represented in this discussion, not just those with the greatest numbers in terms of voting power. There's no doubt in my mind that the 2 unitary option will be pushed through today, but again, given local cross-party opposition, and we might suspect within one party, I'm cautiously optimistic that it won't happen. Much has been made of saving money, but given the amount of resources which are likely to be put into working up the proposals before us today into a more detailed plan, I think it's a shame that that's money which is probably going to be wasted, because when government look at this, they're likely to consider the opposition to it and may not be quite as keen on the idea as the controlling group are. I'd point people to the information in the City of Lincoln Council document, which explains that up to 26 million may be saved each year under their suggested option, not an amount to be dismissed quite as quickly as the controlling group have done in my view. People focus on numbers too, and Lincoln have cited a starting point of 207k, rising to just under 250k by 2038 and 276k by the year 2050. The vibrant local economy which Lincoln enjoys means that the number of people who connect to and with the city is actually much greater than those numbers. The numbers cited in the 2 unitary model we are being asked to approve are so great that the voices of people in Lincoln will simply be drowned out by those in rural and coastal areas. Lincoln's unique. It has a rich historical and cultural offer. Its parliamentary constituency and its mayoralty are among the oldest in the country. As well as its castle, Lincoln is proud of its cathedral and its mosque, and it welcomes people of all faiths. Lincoln's football team go back 134 years. We have a unique identity. The city boasts 2 universities, a college, a medical school, and Lincolnshire's Heart Centre. Lincoln has close ties to many RAF county bases, and it took a Labour MP to secure the future of RAF Scampton only last year. A few years ago, my good friend Patrick, Lord Cormac, and I fought together to ensure the Red Arrows remained close to the city. We were very different politically, but recognised in each other a person absolutely committed to our city. Lincoln faces challenges too. We've got health inequalities and areas of poverty and deprivation which require a sound local knowledge to ensure the focus and strategies are in place to effectively meet those challenges. I'll finish by saying that for all of those reasons above, I will be voting against those proposals, and I will do everything in my power to support the larger Lincoln unitary proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Corrie.
Thank you, Chairman. As the current representative for the people of Bracebridge Heath, Cannock and Washington, this amendment raises worrying issues for me and my community. Those issues raised very eloquently and passionately and emotionally by Councillor Cook in the south of our county are pertinent for the people and businesses in my division. Being so close to Lincoln and relying on Lincoln for many of our services, including political, retail and social contact, I cannot support a model which completely politically severs my communities from their rightful county town of Lincoln. The North Kesteven, South Kesteven proposal is, in my opinion, and that which is supported by Councillor Dilks in his proposal, the North Kesteven, South Kesteven proposal is, in my opinion, misguided and unsustainable. And when this option is explained to the people in my communities, they agree that they do not want to be politically severed from Lincoln. Therefore, Chairman, I cannot support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I've been a local councillor for over 40 years, and I emphasise on local councillors, and I don't agree with the view that bigger councils are necessarily better. In my experience, bigger councils are remote and bureaucratic, and in the specific case of this council, absolutely focused on rural Lincolnshire and the agricultural industry to the detriment of the urban areas of Lincolnshire and especially the City of Lincoln. And I'm hoping that the City of Lincoln Council's proposal for a Greater Lincoln Unitary Authority, which will cover all of Lincoln City and the communities around Lincoln, whose residents often work, shop and take their leisure in and around the city. The Greater Lincoln Council would be genuinely local and would preserve local democracy in the city. And as Councillor Lee said, we've had local democracy of one form or another for 800 years. And the thing is about Greater Lincoln is a vibrant, growing city which fits the government's model for economic growth in terms of housing, in terms of transport, you name it. And a Greater Lincoln Council would not be too big. It would be a local government for the people in the area, and I hope the City Council are successful in persuading central government to agree to a Greater Lincoln Council. You probably notice I've only talked about Lincoln, and the reason is I'm only here to talk about Lincoln. I represent the northwest corner of the city, and I'm very proud to. And the reason I only mention Lincoln is because I don't know that much, for example, about Stamford and Rutland. I've never been to Rutland, I've been to Stamford, very nice place. But the councillors, I've listened carefully to them, and I respect what they've got to say. Like you, Chair, I represent Lincoln, and that's what I'm primarily concerned with. So I hope the City Council can persuade the government to give them the Greater Lincoln Authority we need.
Thank you. Councillor Brockway.
Thank you very much, Chairman. One thing that's worrying me very much in the debate today is there's an awful lot of concentration on localised areas. People seem to be batting for their own corner. We're not here for that purpose today. We are county councillors here today, and that's what we're here for. So I should be as considerate in my thoughts about Stamford and NK and these other areas as I am for my West Lindsey seat. We are here as county councillors. I've read the proposals that have gone through. One thing that worries me, in the different areas that is, one thing that worries me is that they don't seem to be taking consideration of the massive county services. There is, by splitting the county up in the way the proposals are coming forward from the different areas, there is going to be an inevitable fragmentation of the massive services like adults, children's, fire and rescue and highways. How do these smaller groupings plan to take on the massive costings and the massive complexities of those areas? I hear the business about the proposals about the three-council model, and those models will be heard because different areas have put them in. So we already know that those areas have sent them into government or in the process of doing so. But today, my thoughts have to be on the good of the county. What is going to be most efficient, most cohesive? What is going to provide those essential services that our people are so desperate to retain? And bear in mind that the services that are likely to be more affected by the fragmentation proposed by some of my colleagues today are those that will hurt people the most. So what I intend to do is to vote on a county basis, and I will be voting against the amendment and for the county's proposal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington.
Thank you much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I share quite a lot of the comments that Councillor Brockway has just made about the dangers of moving to a 3 unitary authority and the disaggregation of some really crucial services, such as adults and children's. We've had a number of comments about, that the big isn't better, and that services run on a county-wide basis are remote. Well, let's remind members that of the 2 services where we spend 2/3 of our budget, adults and children's, our adult social services is rated as good, and our children's services are rated as outstanding. So I'm not entirely sure how that sort of plays in with the idea that somehow a remote council in Lincolnshire isn't, somehow is devoid from its residents when our services in 2 such crucial areas are regarded as being good and outstanding. The work that the PwC did on behalf of the County Council network around this is really clear. The costs of setting up a 3 unitary with a disaggregation of some of these really huge contracts, these really huge services, will end up by costing, and it won't cost the councils the money, it'll cost our residents the money. It will put their council tax up. If the more cost that these models, this move to unitary, the cost will be borne by our taxpayers. So my view is support the 2 options. The 2 county options are on the table. They provide the least possible disruption. They'll be cheaper to implement. We know that we can run really good services on a county-wide basis, and we should be allowed to do so. In terms of the amendment, well, I sat through the South Kesteven debate on earlier this week, and I voted against the proposal put forward by Councillor Dilk, so I'm going to be doing so again for largely the same reasons. I don't entirely agree with Councillor Brockway. Yes, I'm here as a county councillor, but I also represent my local residents. And in my division, I've got the Earlsfield estate, which is one of the most deprived wards, not only in Lincolnshire, but also in the country. Under the model that's proposed to take Rutland in, it will mean that the taxpayers, the council taxpayers of the new Kesteven, Rutland and South Holland, or Crash, as I prefer to refer to it as, will cost an extra £60 a year. My residents in the poor part of the Earlsfield estate being asked to pay an extra 60 quid to fund Rutland, which is one of the most wealthiest areas in the country, Mr. Chairman, doesn't sit with me at all. So I'll be voting against that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My own personal first choice in all of these options, actually not an option before us today, but it would be to leave well alone. Whatever efficiencies the government thinks it's going to make by reorganising local government across the country, I genuinely fear will be more than wiped out through the disruption and upheaval that it will cause. Local government, I appreciate 2-tier local government is a little bit inefficient, but it's a system that we have got to know and to an extent love for the last 50 years. We know how it works, we know which bits work together. Unfortunately, we don't have that option before us today, and it is actually heartening to hear those arguments around local identity and where bits of Lincolnshire fit in relation to one another. I represent the deep south of Lindsey. Now, that's not the deep south of Lincolnshire, but it is certainly the southernmost bit of the old Lindsey County Council. And if I was in the business of making nuanced arguments for little splits and joins to make things make sense, I'd go right the way back to 1894 and say that the Boston Rural Sanitary District, which was in Lindsey County Council, should have been put into Holland in the first place. But since it wasn't and it isn't, we've got the boundaries more or less of what we have at the moment. And my fear is that every splice and join that we make, or the government makes, in the process which is going to take place, is an extra complication, an extra upheaval in the service delivery at that ground level. And good points have already been made by Councillor Brockway, Councillor Whittington, around this area. We deliver incredibly important services as a county council, and highways, if we get that wrong, you can't get out of a parish council meeting for about 3 hours. Adults and children's social services, if you get those wrong, then incredibly vulnerable people suffer. And it is for that reason that I am content to support, not the amendment but the substantive motion, that we look for a continuity model in Lincolnshire. And if we can't have a continuity model in Lincolnshire, I would be quite happy to settle for the recreation of Lindsey County Council, in whose ancient chamber we sit today, and Holland and Kesteven being the other one. And if Rutland wants to come into that, then I would happily see them join, but it needs to be for Rutland to make that decision, not us.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't planning to speak on this, as I'd said most of what I wanted to at overview and scrutiny, but the comments of Councillor Lee and Councillor Murray, I felt I had no option. It will be one of the biggest land grabs we have seen. The people of West Lindsey haven't been consulted if they want to be attached to Lincoln in any way, shape or form, and their council tax to go up. So to talk about local, I think, is quite cheeky. The issue at Scampden was touched upon, but conveniently it was forgotten that Sir Edward Lee worked tirelessly in some weeks every day raising a question in the chamber to ensure that we got to where we are, and that the previous Conservative administration at West Lindsey actually ensured we are where we are, but that's politics for you. Chairman, as Councillor Ashton's alluded to, the key for me and my residents is that services stay coherent, that they are effective and that they work, and that we have a sense of history and attachment to the place which we are a part of. And for my residents, that very much is a part of Lincolnshire as it currently sits and stands. And so for that reason, Chairman, on that basis, I believe a continuity model is the right model. And whilst I do have great sympathy for what has been said with regard to South Kesteven, etc., you have to have a willing partner. And it certainly seems, from the information I've seen, Chairman, that Rutland, as it does currently, Chairman, is looking towards Leicestershire because that's where its services are. But I have a great deal of sympathy for them. But I am here in the interest of my own residents, Chairman, as well as the County Council. And on those two fronts, Chairman, it doesn't serve either of those interests. And I also think it doesn't potentially meet the government's criteria either. So for that basis, I will be supporting the substantive motion and hope that the continuity model is the one that the government chooses, because representation isn't about the size or the area. Yes, it makes things difficult, but if you're a good councillor and you're good at what you do, you find a way to make it work. And I have done that, Joe, and I'm sure others have as well. When you have four or five parish council meetings on a night, you find a way to make it work, because that's what we're here for. We are here to ensure our residents' council tax stays low and our services for those that matter, be it highways, be it children's, be it adults, be it fire, works. And the continuity model does that, Chairman, so I'll be supporting the substantive motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mon.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, there is a certain irony listening to the Labour group criticise plans for 2 unitary councils and local government reorganisation. We must remind you that it is your government, it is your party that is asking us to do this. In fact, not asking us, making us do this. This is not something we have tabled, it's not something that we want to do. We are being asked to put forward these plans by your government, of which the Lincoln Member of Parliament is a member of that government. Our interim plans comply with the government's criteria, and they provide the greatest harmonisation for service delivery, which therefore reduces disruption for the public and vulnerable service users in Lincolnshire, and that is the most important part of this discussion. The 3 unitary councils do not meet the population size criteria, and the evidence shows that the impact of disaggregation of services across those unitaries compromise the gains from aggregation of other services. So there's marginal gains to be had by doing that. And Councillor Dilks talks about the disconnect that he feels a big county authority would have from the public. Do you feel disconnected from your community today as a county councillor? Because the county council delivers services across the county boundary: adult social care, an outstanding rated children's services, a fire and rescue emergency response, and a heritage sites, highways, and so many others, libraries, so many tourism, economic development, so many services across this county that the public rate as good, external independent inspectors rate as good or outstanding, and we manage people's money carefully. We have done a good job. For the 8 years I've been in this council, I'm proud of our record. We've balanced the books when councils haven't, and there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that a county unitary authority would not continue in the same fashion: good, strong, steady leadership, balancing the books, delivering good services, supporting the most vulnerable people in our county. And I think our interim plans, for that reason, meet the criteria, provide that service harmonisation, and it is the best starting place for this discussion with government. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Please.
You're very kind, thank you. Just to pick up, it wasn't me, it's not me, Councillor Mon, saying, expressing concerns about the possible imbalance between a large principal authority and the mayoral authority. That is in the government guidelines, and I understand in the white paper. So it's the government actually saying that you mustn't sort of go down the route that is going to create that imbalance. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, point of order, Chair. I was quoted with regard to the numbers for this, and my understanding is that the numbers we've been given by government are for guidance and they're not an absolute rule. Thank you.
Understood. We've been given the guidance of 500,000, and until we hear otherwise, we'll continue on that vein, basically. So let's move on. Councillor Murphy. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there, sorry.
I beg your pardon, Chairman, you are mistaken. The letter talks about a figure of 500,000, but it says clearly that other options would be considered.
That's fair enough. Until we hear these other options, we'll continue as we understand. Councillor Marfleet. Who is it next? Marfleet, yes.
Morning, Chairman. Thank you. Well, for me, I'm a big believer that Greater Lincolnshire should be one unitary and actually get rid of every other council. It would make life so much easier. Everybody in Lincolnshire would know exactly where to go, what their local council was. It would just make life simple. And it would be brilliant. It would be brilliant. We're getting there slowly. We've got a mayor now coming, and here we are with local government reform. You know what? There's always some area outside Lincolnshire that will use Lincolnshire. And Rutland is one of those areas. And you know what? But Rutland actually is Rutland, and it always wants to be Rutland, and so let's just carry on as we are. When I look at the 2 options, there is one that really does stand out more than the other. When I look at all the options that I've seen on a piece of paper, I can understand why government wants to reform. I mean, how do you work with 317 councils in England alone? You know, if you're trying to conduct, like COVID was the prime case, trying to get agreement across the country, it was a nightmare trying to deal with every district council trying to hold you to ransom. Then we go back to Lincolnshire, the bins. For years, we've had fights with 7 district councils about, oh, we don't want this in our bin. No, we don't want to do this. We're not going to do that. We're going to hold you to ransom. And it goes fight, 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 fight. And yippee-doo, in 2 years, we might get rid of all of that infighting and just focus on what is best for Lincolnshire. And when I speak to people of Lincolnshire, you know what? They all know what Lincolnshire County Council is. So, for me, option 1 is actually the most cost-effective because it really keeps Lincolnshire County Council in its existing form. I would implode all the district councils into Lincolnshire County Council. And you know what? I would keep Impey because I tell you what, we don't want to lose him either. And actually, why should not Lincolnshire County Council actually stay, but it becomes the unitary? Because it's easy. If you speak to anybody in the street and say, what's your county council? Oh, Lincolnshire. They know it. So why do we want to go and start changing it? And I bet we'll give MP a different image and a different this, and no, every bank deed, everything's going to have to change. Why? Because we're still going to provide the same services. And we're still really good at providing adults and children, and that's why we've got to keep it intact. You can't start splitting it all up, and it'll be chaos. I mean, would you take adult social care director and slice him in 3 ways? Not really. You may as well keep him in 1. So I'm all for 1. And option 1 is the most effective. And option 2 is a good compromise. And the rest, let's get rid of and get back to being focused on Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marfleet. Councillor Overton.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. And that actually gives me a really good starting point, doesn't it? Is democracy too inconvenient? Is it too much trouble to have discussions with people in order to listen to their views, which are locally based, and work together to create a really solid, best way forward? I don't think so. I think what we need to do is to make sure that our residents are heard in every corner, in every place where decisions are made. If we think about our councils at the moment, our current district councils even, how hard is it to change the policy on that district council? For Mrs. Jo Bloggs, who lives at 94. How hard is that? Some people think that even those are too hard to change. How much harder would it be then to change something that is so much bigger, that it's the whole of the area? And that's why I think if we can have smaller areas, we'll be much better able to listen and adapt and take care of everybody in our area. I agree with the point that our adults and children's services are doing really well, and we are proud of them. And actually, there is a lot to be said for the current system. We currently have services run by councils that match the size that's needed. So actually, I have sympathy with the point that was made earlier by Councillor Ashton, just leave it as it is. Unfortunately, that's not what the government has decided. It is the government who is pushing us to make changes, to dissolve our district and our county councils. Why? Could it be to save money? Could it be that they think local government is really a bit expensive? All these services, you know, that are provided are a little bit too much? Therefore, can they not make their own savings by reorganising, offloading some staff, providing a bit less service here and there? Is that really what's going on? Let's make sure that we put our residents first. In other parts of the country where they have gone through this process, estimated savings have been predicted, as they are now, by this county council, the county network that's been put forward, the proposals to demonstrate how much savings could be made. But that is what they hope to be made. Where we have seen changes, for example, Cornwall, those savings have not been realised. So I do think that what we need to concentrate is to make sure that we have new authorities that match local thinking and can listen carefully and get the right solutions. Thank you.
Councillor Fleetwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got a lot of sympathy for Councillor Marfleet, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Smith with regard to comments. If it isn't broke, don't try and fix it. We've got an excellent county council, well branded. Why not move it forwards in some sort of a unit going forwards? I have issues with regard to the Lincoln City proposal in that, yes, it might be a little bit of a land grab, but I represent fringe villages around Lincoln. And the issue for those fringe villages, each one of them has their own separate communities, their own separate identities, and sometimes even a couple of miles apart, never the twain shall mix. Frequently, those people all want to do their own thing in their own format. And then if I take it one stage further, if we look at the Lincoln model again, goes out as far as Faldingworth and beyond. While some of the areas I represent, you have difficulty for people, for neighbours, to see each other with a pair of binoculars. So how does that actually fit in? You know, we have sparsity in West Lindsey currently in the Lincoln fringe areas. So what will happen? Suddenly, when we get to a funding issue, if suddenly you're awarding a fund, a grant towards an organisation, I can see all that money being spent in Lincoln City, and us poor country cousins, if you like, will be out there with nothing available and nothing available for a spend. We will be very much forgotten.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to associate myself with the comments thanking officers for the time they've put into this report and also over the last 4 years that I've served in this chamber. I thank my colleagues as well. This might be the last time that I speak in this chamber. It might be the last time that any of us speak in this chamber. And kind of, I hope that we're not replaced. I hope that the council does change in its form after May the 1st, because change is good. And I think that the unitary, that's one of the reasons why I don't like the first, what you call continuing authority, which seems like, to me, a way to sidestep reorganisation. I think local government reorganisation is, in principle, a good idea, and you can't blame the Labour government for doing it, because the previous Conservative government, 14 years, talked about it, but nothing actually happened. That's true of several things. So the proposal from the south, I guess, from North Kesteven and South Kesteven at least, is a proposal based on market towns with a rural hinterland. We wouldn't have a cathedral, we could live with that. We would have, though, military heritage, especially Royal Air Force bases and the industry that comes around them, and also food, farming, agriculture, and much, much more. Councillor Brockway said that we appear to be batting for our own corners. Well, I make no apology for that at all. Deepings residents expect me to stand up for the Deepings, and I think that's true in all of us. And that's a lot easier to do if you're going to a council which is close and relevant to you. I don't think people in the frozen north would want me standing up for them, because I don't know their issues and they don't know mine. So I think we should be returning to something like the parts of Lincolnshire mentioned earlier, Holland, Kesteven, and if we, in order to meet the government's targets, we need to bring in the ancient county of Rutland with that, then I think that works. Holland, Kesteven and Rutland, and that should at least be considered. And I was pleased with your letter, Councillor Hill, that appears to leave a bit of room for that. So Councillor Whittington talked about the big model is the cheapest way. I don't want the cheapest, I want the best, because we know that cheapest is not always best. Best, long term, works out cheapest. So when you have support from Conservatives, nearly all, I think all Conservatives that turned up in North Kay, some of the Conservatives in South Kay, because Conservatives in South Kay have minds of their own and different opinions and so on. When you find that Cleaver, Dilks, Cook and Baxter are all on the same page, then there's got to be something right about it. Yeah. So stand up to the civil servants, stand up to the Labour government, and let's go forward with all options on the table.
Councillor Bunny.
Thank you, Chair. I've had the privilege this morning to hear two of my constituents speak about what they would like to see under the reorganisation. They are very clearly telling me that they would like to have a continuity model, one council, and clearly a model which goes forward based on Lincolnshire. Only yesterday, I was speaking to some other constituents who've got a slightly different view. They live right up at the north of my body, area of West Lindsey, and they are looking at moving in with Scunthorpe and Welkingham, that area. So there's a lot of debate going on. My concern is that we do need to make things easier. I'd love to keep it as it is, but that's not going to happen. So we've got to move forward. And one of the things we regularly get is different councils do different things. People don't understand that. We want to have a simple system which we can work in as councillors to deliver those services and the benefits we want to do so. I hear from Councillor Fleetwood, a fellow West Lindsey councillor, that we are a rural area, sparsely populated. And that has always been my concern, that which any of these models come, that those of us in the middle who live in those sparsely populated areas could lose out. So what we need to do is to be going out of our way to make sure we get the best opportunities that are provided for us in our local areas. So for that reason, I think we do need to keep options open at this stage and keep as many on the table as we can, because the amount of time which has been given to us by this current government is not enough for us to get all those compromises, all those decisions made that we need to do so. So my view is that we have to keep everything open and make sure that at the end of the day, it is the local people who work and benefit from this rather than the politicians or whoever else might want to impose on us a system.
Thank you. Right, that concludes the speakers unless there's another one. Yes, Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. And if one or two practicalities, and I'm sure the leader will correct me if I'm wrong, but Councillor Dilks, Councillor Baxter, Councillor Cook and Councillor Cleaver have all spoken about Rutland and joining with Rutland. But that's, as far as I can see and as far as I've heard, the representatives in the South Kesteven area wanting Rutland to come with Lincolnshire. I have not seen any evidence that Rutland wish to join us. And so it's very difficult to make a suggestion without that evidence. I'm not saying that it's not welcome, but let's just be sure that it's the right way round, that Rutland want to come one way and not South Kesteven wanting Rutland to come one way. Councillor Bunny actually just made a point that I was going to say around the services and the numbers. We must be very mindful that it's not a numbers situation. It is how are we going to provide those services that we provide at the moment and we continue to provide with high quality for the benefit of residents. Residents need to be certain that what they're getting is absolutely the best and they should expect that. My final point would be, how many times, if I had £1 for every time my residents have said, the council, because quite frankly, they don't understand the different types of services that are provided by the different councils, then I would be a very rich individual. So let's make that a reality. Let's make it the council. I will not be able to support the amendment, but I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Keith first.
Thank you. Just a brief word, Mr. Chairman. As far as people have said to me that I've spoken to, and perhaps I think too, one of the benefits of this will be less people in charge, less big salaries and executives and directors, and it'd be more concentrated, and that's where the money will be saved, and that's what people want. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure the front desk agree with you there, but... Councillor Griggs.
Thank you very much. I wasn't planning on talking today, but the debate sort of struck some chords with me. I remember when I first got involved in local government and devolution started to become a thing people talked about. It was all about better representation, services far more focused at a local level. And I have great sympathy for the amendment, and on the face of it, it sounds fantastic. The problem is, I feel that the way we're being sold devolution will never work effectively. We don't have clear timelines for, in 5 years' time, this is happening, which allows us to get contracts sorted to maintain continuity of services. We're here to represent all our residents, but I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that the most important residents that we need to take care of in the short and medium term is the vulnerable ones. And I think from my point of view, maintaining services that we do so well across Lincolnshire is the most important thing. So unfortunately, I won't be able to support the amendment. However, in an ideal world, I'd love to. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? None seen. Councillor Bradwell, you reserve the right to speak. Okay. Councillor Hill, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, obviously you gave Councillor Dilks, who's always been cheeky, a lot of leeway in terms of time. I'm hoping to stick within 3, so I hope you'll be as look kindly upon myself.
I've gone
as
soft,
well,
but
although
only to
I'm a lot
certain
less
limit.
cheeky than Councillor Dilks. I think Councillor Woolley said it all. This isn't about what's best for an organisation. This is all about what's best for residents. And I think the thing we should all remember here, looking at county council services, how we can preserve and protect the good services that we currently give to them. And I think I would also say the Rutland issue, I have a huge amount of sympathy with the Rutland issue. I think Councillor Cleaver has made a very eloquent, if you want to go online, you can see he's done a little video, and it makes some really, really valid points. The issue with the Rutland solution is that Rutland aren't playing. They've had their meeting and they've made it clear that they are currently looking at a Leicestershire solution. We have contacted Rutland to say, well, you know, are you interested? Because we can talk about it. And they said, no, we're talking to Rutland. And I have to say their officers were a little bit surprised to see a solution emerging from South Kesteven, which included them. Without them knowing, but I know there have been conversations going on. So it is difficult, which is why I'm suggesting that we have a side letter pointing out to government there are those links between Stamford and Rutland, which probably need to be taken into account when the government makes the decision. I think Councillor Dilks talked about Birmingham and the problems there. Frankly, it's because Birmingham is badly run. And we can all see the pictures of the rubbish piling up, all the problems they've had over years doing it. I won't mention which party runs Birmingham, but we'll move on from that. But all I'll say is the size does matter, and it's quite clear small unitary councils who are responsible for social care and other services like we are all struggling. Many of them are on the brink of bankruptcy. Even the stronger ones, like North Lincolnshire, for example, the future looks very uncertain. So you can understand why a sensible size matters, and 500,000 would seem to be a reasonable size. And there are many rural councils like Wiltshire, Cornwall, places like that are actually unitary and running very well. In terms of the criteria I mentioned, and Councillor Dilks said they cover them. No, they don't. So we talked about 500,000. The proposal before us from the opposition benches actually has 3 councils, none of which hit the 500,000. Efficiencies, and I think we hopefully all read the comments from our county Director of Finance. The efficiencies won't be there because you'll end up with 3 of everything. Managed transitions costs, they will be huge. And if you look at the report, which is on behalf from PwC, you will see those costs are huge. And the more you chop up into 3, the bigger they come and the longer it will too. In particular on 3C, consideration should be given to the impact on social care, children's services, SEND and homelessness. That's not us saying that, that's what the government is saying. So again, I don't think due consideration in the proposal, the amendment does that. And then it shows, proposals to show how councils are working together. And again, with the Rutland option, there doesn't seem to be doing that. So with all of that, Chairman, I would recommend that, and again, it's not our decision, this is merely a first stage where this council will put forward its proposals in the knowledge that other councils will put different proposals, and let's hope the government gives some clarity when it comes back following this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move to the vote on the amendment by the independent group. All those in favour of the independent group amendment? Need to keep the hands for a while. Got them? Those against? I think it's more than 8, yeah. Only just. Any abstentions? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, the amendment is lost. We will now move to the motion by the Conservative group with the alteration which Councillor Hill mentioned in his opening statement of the recommendation 1 to say a proactive approach for the development of proposals for the unitary government in Lincolnshire, including North and North East Lincolnshire, by 28th of November 2025. All those in favour of the substantial motion, please show. Anyone against? Any abstentions? 1. The motion is carried. Sorry? There's one
Thanks,
abstention.
Chair. Can I ask that our group's vote be recorded, please?
Thank you.
We need to know which way you voted.
Can those who voted against, if they want their vote recorded, can you put your hands up, please? Got it? Thank you. That concludes our meeting. I'd just like to say that this is my last one as chairman of this council, apart from the time when I hand over in late May. I'd like to thank you all for your indulgence with me and your support for those that have given it. I'm very grateful to you. And I just remind you that the your pigeonholes should be emptied, so please visit them before you leave. And for those that are staying, I think you know what's happening later. Okay, thank you very much indeed.